Believing that you're destined for heaven when you're not would be the most tragic self-deception. David Servant's book, The Great Gospel Deception, will help you be sure that heaven will be your eternal home. Order your copy at heavenword.tv.
Okay, good to be together once again, and I want to begin just by saying something I wanted to say so many times. We really appreciate when you give us feedback about how you've been blessed by listening to these lessons, okay? And so send me an email, and if you've been blessed, then want to hear about it, okay? Because I speak to this camera, I don't get to see you face to face, and I wish I did. But when we hear from you, either by email or snail mail, it really is an encouragement to us. All right, so take some time when you get a chance, if you want to, and be so appreciated. We're going to continue in Acts chapter 4 and verse number 32. And this is a description of how things were going in the early church. We don't know exactly what the time frame was. It seems like it was a couple of months since Pentecost, but not absolutely certain about that. But it certainly wasn't 10 years after Pentecost. But look what Luke writes as being the outstanding characteristics of the church. He focuses right on what they were doing with their possessions. And the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul. Now, oftentimes we'll stop right there in when a preacher is preaching about this, they see we need to be unified. We need to be of one heart and one soul. And that's true, but the kind of one-heartedness and one-soulishness that Luke is writing about here is expanded and explained more so in the second part of this verse. And not one of them claimed that anything belonging to him was his own, but all things were common property to them. And so this one-heartedness and one-soulishness is expressed in a sharing of their possessions, so that there's no needy person, no materially or physically needy person among them. And I would say that not only does the church today not have any real unity amongst the entire church, it's even rare to find a single congregation that has unity within it. There's so many church splits and factions, and people are on so many different wavelengths. But to find a church or a group of Christians who are to this degree of unity, where they have all things, they hold all things in common, and none of them claim that anything belonging to him is his own, that is very, very rare indeed, I would say. Now, does this mean that nobody owned anything? And I want you to take a look at how this was worded by Luke. Not one of them claimed that anything belonging to him was his own. So they still have possession of it, but they have an attitude that is expressed by their actions. All things are common property to them. So I've got this certain possession, but if you need it, I'll lend it to you. Or if you need it and I don't need it at all, I'll give it to you. Or if I don't need it and lots of people have need of the benefit of, if I sell this, I'll sell this and distribute it to those who have need among us. Okay? And that's borne out in verse number 34. We have to jump over verse 33 and we'll come back to that. But I want to stay on subject here. Verse 34 says, "For there was not a needy person among them, for all who were owners of land or houses would sell them and bring the proceeds of the sales and lay them at the apostles' feet, and they would be distributed to each as any had need." Now, a couple of things we need to talk about here. What does that not actually telling us? Well, it's not telling us that when people were not able to make their car payments, other people sold their houses and their farms and their lands, and they gave the money to the apostles, and the apostles distributed it to those who couldn't make their car payments. Of course, there were no cars. There probably were no payments for anything back in that day. Not the average person wasn't involved in credit in any sense of the word. So they were distributed to any who had need. Well, the Bible defines needs as really basically a couple of things, 2 or 3 things: food, clothing, and covering. These are the truly needy people, of which it's really hard to find anybody like that. And if you do, they're already benefiting from so many social services in our country or because of the local services that are offered. So we do have a little bit different situation than they did in that regard. But I just want to point out that oftentimes we are persuaded, or people try to persuade us to dispossess in order to share the wealth so that everybody comes up to the same level. That is not what is happening here necessarily at all. We're meeting actual needs, okay? And that is to be praised, and that makes sense, okay? When people are in that bad of straits, where they're starving, where they're hungry, when they don't have food or covering, clothing for themselves, or a place to sleep where they can be protected from the elements, that's a critical need. We need to do what we can to meet those needs, okay? And that's worth making any sacrifice. But to ask me to sell my house so that you can make your car payment, that's probably, not a legitimate redistribution whatsoever, okay? Another thing we could say is everybody selling their primary residence? Is anybody who owns lands selling it? Well, you can understand that if you sell your house, then you're homeless. If you sell the house you're living in, okay? Now you can scale down, sell your house and get a smaller house, sure. But again, we have other evidence in the book of Acts that Christians did own homes. They used them for churches, okay? So there was home ownership. I think this describes people who had more than one home or a bigger home than what they needed. They're dispossessing themselves of that and then sharing them with those who are truly needy. All right, this is a very interesting topic, one which has interested me for a long time, one that we talk about a lot here at Heaven's Family. And so can't wait to talk about that with you some more next time. I'll see you next time.
HeavenWord 7 is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.